So tonight in this video, I want to talk about using this 4-grid setup. Now, what we've got going on is it's Sunday night, the market is opened, and I'm looking at the market moving in sync. I'm long in the ES, and I'm looking at this area here where there is some potential resistance. And it's the same spot for all four, but some of them have already made it through that resistance. See how when I stop my mouse here on the Russell, it matches up with the same pivot that I've already spotted in the S&P. So I mark that line, and now both of the same pivots are marked. You can see the Russell is already broken above it. The S&P is still struggling with it. We go over to the NASDAQ side, and I keep moving my mouse until it lines up with the same pivots that I've already marked out on the S&P and the Russell. And I click that, and you can see that the NASDAQ is not yet broke above it. Go down to the Dow in the lower right. Do the same thing again. We're hunting for the same pivot, and we mark that. Now we've marked all four. They are moving in sync. We are working with all four of them together, and it's the Russell that's already made its way across the top. You can see that the other three markets are struggling with it. This is actually an indication that there's weakness here and that we could get market failure. But whether or not we make it through there isn't necessarily the effort that I'm going through. It's more the idea that I'm watching all four markets in sync. And to do that, I need to have a basis to draw upon, right? We need a foundation for anything that we do. And in this, my foundation is I'm looking at this resistance here. And I want to know, since the markets are all moving in sync, where they're going to find resistance. Because one of them could give me a notice to get out of my trade early, give me a warning that this is going to fail, right? And so I want to be able to map out not just the chart that I'm trading, which is the ES, but also map out the other three while I'm at it to indicate to me where there's weakness or where we could run into a roadblock. So you can see here that there is a closer pivot point, and I want to map that out on all four as well. And it's actually this candle. Let's make sure we're lined up there on the, we're going to get that one because it's going to have to be that one right there. And here it is that one. It is that one, but I don't like the wick. So we're just going to use the pivot from down here on the S&P. We'll follow back up with the NASDAQ, which puts us here on the Dow and puts us here on the Russell, right? And so that's how we can readjust the pivot that I had drawn on the Russell to go right there. That lines all four of them up again. We can actually move this one to its appropriate spot. And all we're trying to do is identify unified structures. We want market sync to help verify or confirm what it is that we're doing, right? Think about the situation here. I'm long in the S&P, and we've hit this area of resistance, and we're just bumping and bumping and bumping against it. And if it starts to pull back on me, I have to make a decision. Do I bail out of my trade? Do I average down? Should I just leave everything alone? Well, if I can identify any kind of information from one of these other charts that can help me with that decision, then it's a good thing, right? I'm not a person that wants to average down normally, but if I can see that the Russell had already, for example, pulled back to 26 and had bounced and was starting to rally to the upside, that rally up would perhaps give me more confidence in the idea that we could break through this area of resistance. This resistance that we're looking at here has already been broken in the Russell. It's not broken in the NASDAQ or in the Dow. Okay, so this is the kind of stuff that I'm talking about when I'm saying we want to map these out. And in fact, if we look at it, that pivot point that I'm sitting here looking at in the Russell is the pivot point from back here. Okay, so it's actually the leader out of all of these, the small caps are leading the way. These other three markets, they're still underneath it. So I'm going to pause the recording here, and then we'll follow back up. Well, while we're at it, while we're waiting to see what happens next, we'll go over to the live account. You can see my trade was up. I just got filled in my order. I had a target to get out, and we just hit that target. I'm day done. My daily goal is 5 points in the ES, or 5 points in the S&P. Let me say it that way. And plus commissions and fees. So I really only needed to get just a few points. You can see I'm a bit past that, more closer to 10 points, but that's okay. The idea is that I'm actually done and I hit my goal, and we're actually breaking the new highs. I'm going to go ahead and jump back in from the 48. What I'd like to see the S&P do today is get up to 70. You can see that we're at 48. We're up on the day by 23 points. So it might be a bit of a stretch to go from 48 up to 70, but that's where I'd like to be by the morning. I'm looking to get into a swing trade for the overnight hours. You can see this, we're having a pretty decent trend. The market's trying to stabilize and push higher. I did get risk out of that last trade. I need to put a disaster stop in place to protect me while I'm on the other charts. Remember, a disaster stop has nothing to do with trying to limit your risk in the trade. It's only there to stop you from an economic downturn, say a tweet or some random market event that could drop the market, 60 points in the blink of an eye. I wouldn't want to hit my disaster stop down there. But what I'd rather do is hit that disaster stop than take a 60-point drop before I could get back and close that trade. So since I'm not on the trading platform, I'm over here on Thinkorswim. I have that disaster stop in place. Once we move far enough away from my entry, what I could do is take that disaster stop and move it up between me, meaning where I got in, and where we are currently. I don't want to do that yet because you can see we're really rangy. If I was to put my stop in place here, I could very easily get stopped out of a good trade, and I don't want that to happen. So I'm going to just leave it down there where it's at, and that'll be good enough. You can see that my disaster stop is right around 44 points. That would put us here. And like I said, this has nothing to do with trying to limit my risk in the trade. I'm only looking to protect myself from economic events while I'm not at the platform. So, okay, we now have the break above in 3 out of the 4 markets. The Dow is still struggling with that same structure. This line right here is the one that the Russell is already resting past. The same with this one, and we want to color that to make sure we don't get it confused. And we'll do the same here in the NASDAQ. This kind of trading takes time. It's not something that you're going to be able to learn from one video, but I did want to introduce the concept because I've talked about trading using these 4 grids a lot, and I get questions all the time about what it is I'm doing, what I'm looking for, why I'm doing it. So you can kind of see what we've got going on here. And if you get them out of whack, just double click each one of them and then hold your control key and roll your mouse, roll the wheel on the top of it, and you can get them back in sync again. This is the main reason that I don't trade with tick charts. Tick is recorded by how many shares or how many trades have gone through, how many shares in the trade contracts, and that will get them all out of sync. They won't move in unison anymore. They would move in the general direction together, but that's not what we're looking for, right? You can see that one other indicator that I used, the NASDAQ, it has broken and closed above the 75. and we're looking for the 75 to hold. So that's going to be another indication now that this white line is going to maintain as our support. What I'm worried about now is the Dow. It's taken a strong rejection here. This pullback in the NASDAQ after it finally broke to 75 is what's giving us weakness in the S&P. And what we could do is try to map out this structure here in the Russell. It is the unique one out of the four. And right now, we've got to be able to use this to our advantage. So we need a way to map out this price structure here. I'll just highlight that in a box. We need to map this in a way that helps us identify, well, I think that box will do it. So what we want to use with this box, what we want to see is that when the Russell pulls back, it holds that support. Now, we don't really want to trust the wicks, so I'm going to try to pull this down just a little bit. And we'll use that candle right there. We would look at this and say, you know, the Russell really shouldn't break back through that 27 right there. And if we're looking at them in sync, you can see the S&P pulling back to that line, the NASDAQ pulling back to that line, and the Russell pulling back to the top of this box. We're going to use that box since there's no line there. That line is this line in the Russell. But in all these other markets, these blue lines here, right? So that's going to have to be our support. For the Dow, we're really just floating. We have nothing to run on except that we can draw a box here. And we could say that this red line here, this pullback in the candles, needs to hold here and not break out of that box. So the Russell, we want to see it hold on the top of this box. We want to see the Dow hold in the lower end of this box. And we want to see the S&P and the NASDAQ hold that line, and it is not holding that line. So there's our failure. There's our failure. We don't have failure here, but we're below the 75 on the NASDAQ. So a lot of weakness here. Now, just to make it easy to see, we put everything in the box because we are now in a new range. And there we go, just like this. So this is unified trading. This is looking at multiple grids, not just staring at the one single chart that we're looking to trade, recognizing that there are forces that push against our trades from many different directions. And that if we was to only look at the ES, since that's the only trade that I'm in, we would be missing out on all this other information that we can get. So you can see I am taking a little bit of heat. And we're going to put in a run for the 45. Perhaps the 44 would be a better place to run. But the reason I don't want to go to the 44 is because if we can grab that 45 and rally up, then we're trying to get ahead a little bit. But if I was to use only the 44 and we never made it to the 44 and we started to move back up, I wouldn't have got anything, right? So that's why I didn't use the 44. I've tried that before and missed. You know, I had a market come down to say 44.75 and then turn around and move all the way back up to 48, which was my original entry. And that entire move back up, I didn't get anything out of it. And instead was just able to get out even. So by using the 45, I've averaged down my entry to 46.5, right? Which is not great, but is better. And we still want to see this price hold. Now, if I zoom in on the 15-minute, you can see that we've got this really shallow cup. And we've formed a little bit of a handle. we do have this really nasty price action here that we had consolidated price action, expansion, contraction, expansion, contraction, normal market breadth, right? Just like most things in nature, expansion and contraction, the waves of the ocean, your chest as you breathe. The market is a living being. It's like nature, and it expands and contracts. We're just I was playing for a breakout of the 48 because I'm not one to wait for confirmation, and because of that, it pulled back on me to the 44. Okay, so looking at this, that 44 is a serious level. A break below the 44, I would have to give some serious consideration into perhaps bailing out on my trade. But we do seem to be trying to hold the line. You can see the NASDAQ is really struggling to hold that 70 range. And we're eating through a lot of contracts here at the 45.5. You can see we just ticked up to 45.75. What we were witnessing there is price had moved down to that 45.5 range, and there was just chewing through orders without moving anywhere. It was just absorbing that iceberg of orders, or dark pool, or whatever you want to call it. So the market had made that move, and it was just mowing through all of those contracts and not actually moving out of that range. I'm still learning how to trade with that kind of information. I've been working on the classes through Jigsaw Trading, level 4 order flow, and I'm not ready to use that yet in my trading, but I'm still picking up bits and pieces of using that in a part of my analysis. I am looking to put on a swing trade for the night. I do want to go to sleep while I'm long in the market, which is why I'm letting price move around as much as I am here. I'm not much for trying to scalp the market. I'm a position trader, and that's why I look at the big picture, and I'm willing to sit in a trade like this. I would much rather have seen the break above 48, which is my original purpose for getting in. But since my goal on the evening is to go ahead and put on a swing trade, I'm willing to let price move around a little bit. These overnight swing trades, they're great trades, but getting them set up can be frustrating. So it is 10 after 8 my time, so that's 10 after 9 market time. And these spikes, if we go back and look at the time frame, they match up with when the Asian markets opened up, Tokyo and Hong Kong. And then we've also got economic news coming out from the overseas markets, and that is also going to be affecting things. I believe we got one coming up in 15 minutes. That there is one more bit of market data before I go to bed at 9:30, I believe. So I'm going to pause the video, and I'm going to go see what that economic event is. All right, so here we are on FX Street. You can see that I brought up the economic calendar for tonight, and there is no event. This is showing February 3rd, so I'm going to bump that date back one day, and we'll see what it... No, that didn't do it. So what this is showing nothing for today. It keeps going right into, you can see I'm on today's. There's something at midnight, and then there's something at 12:30, but nothing at 9:30. So whatever it was that I was thinking was going to be there for 9:30 is not there. That's fine with me. All right, so you can see we've got more weakness. We managed to break through that price structure that we were looking at. NASDAQ still pulling down, has dropped out of the 70s. Bit of a concern. Ran across a lot of these buy orders here. You see they're coming in at the 44. So instead of giving you the blow by blow, I'm going to pause it out, and then I'll update you when I'm getting ready to either exit the trade or go to bed with a swing intact. All right, so we've moved up a bit, and I did not want to get into this trade with all three contracts, so I'm going to be trying to get one of those off. We'll just call it risk out. And then from that, I will be long two. That was kind of the original goal. And then hopefully we'll get a move far enough through price that I can put a stop between price and my entry, what I usually call me. Put a stop between price and me. Just wanted to update you on that. All right, so you can see that we've ticked through where my order was. I'm back down to 2 contracts. We're pressing back up with the NASDAQ into that resistance area. The S&P is still lagging behind. I still don't have enough room yet to put a stop. So I'm going to hold off on that, I believe, just for a moment. Now, one thing that you can do in a situation like this is you can extend your entry down. See here where I'm going to go ahead and do it to show you. So there you go. I'm down to 1 contract, and by doing that, I've dropped my entry because I had averaged down to where now I'm up 2 points away from my entry. Okay. I could try to put my stop in somewhere down here. And if I did this, what would happen is if I leave it here and I go to bed, I'm either going to get stopped out paying for my contract fees, or the market will continue to move through the night and I'll wake up tomorrow in a good trade. I really don't like to do this if I'm still at the computer. I wouldn't want to do this because price could easily come down and hit me out of my trade, when if I'm still here, I could manage it. I'd rather just manage it and give price more room to let it roam around. Remember that if you're going to swing trade these, you have to be willing to let price have some distance. Now, I didn't get in at a good spot at that 48. And that's the problem that we all run into, is when you're watching something break out from the high, you have to either make the decision to get in with the breakout and have price come against you, or not get in at the breakout and watch price run away without you being in the trade, right? So it's always one of those decisions. You could wait for price to pull what I call a Busby, and that is that you watch price break out and you wait for it to come back down and validate the breakout, and then you get in. Of course, you could miss the reentry, or price doesn't have to come back and let you in which case you've missed your opportunity, right? So one example of that would be this price action here. When we had formed this consolidated range and we were forming that compression there, when we noticed the compression and we seen the breakout, we could have tried to get in, right? But of course, we're hardly ever around, right? But say we're here, we're watching it, and we see it break that right there, and we think, oh, we're going to get in it. Well, when we get in, we don't know if it's actually going to make that kind of run or not. But we could wait, because this is what we call a Busby. So if we wait and we see it break out and we're patient, we can let price break out, come back down and let us in. But you can see here, it didn't come all the way back down. So if we had waited, perhaps we could have got in, or perhaps we would have missed it, right? This is all a part of what has to be decided, not just one time, but every time. What is your strategy going to be? How are you going to make these calls, and how do you make it consistent so that you try to do the same thing every time and you're not playing by gut every time you go to get into a trade, right? This is the kind of stuff that you want to work out either on paper, through repetition, or by using the hard right edge and slowly developing a trade strategy that you will use consistently. And the only way that that works is you got to use it for a while. You got to give it time, right? Months. And then if what you are seeing doesn't work, then you adjust it. And then you give it a few months and then you adjust it. And that's how you work through something and develop a strategy that works for you. And it's the reason that we can't just hand somebody a strategy, right? What works for me might not work for you. You might not have my stomach for risk. You might not want to let price move around as far. Maybe you don't have the patience. Maybe you have more patience than me and you think that mine is too risky. These are all the reasons, and plus some, that we can't just hand people a strategy and expect it to work for them. Now, what I'm not liking out of all of this is that we've been rejected at this level and we've got all of this weakness forming, and the NASDAQ is again back below the 70s, right? So that's not looking good, and I might not get my swing in place after all. The only thing that I can say is I'm still day done, and if I don't get my swing trade on tonight, I can still go to bed knowing that I'm already done for the day, and I'm under no pressure or obligation to try to get back in and trade some more, right? So there is that. And if we back up and kind of look at things here in the 15-minute, you can see we're still pressing against these pivots from last week, right? So we'll just have to see how it goes. I'm going to pause it here again. All right, so you can see from the updated boxes that the Russell broke back down below, and now the markets are pretty much back in sync. We don't even need the cyan lines anymore. We'll be able to erase those, erase these boxes, and now the white line will all be matching with the price action from these levels, and we'll just bring those down. And that is going to be about it. This has been a video on getting more familiar with these grids, using these grids in sync when you're charting out these four. Sometimes these won't move in sync right away, and it's going to take you some time to develop this as a practice. And so using these identifiable pivot points, just anything that you can find on one chart that you could then map out on the other three. I appreciate your time. I look forward to seeing you at the next video.